Hello there, my friend. My name is Renee, and I have Tourette Syndrome. So this disorder, which is a neurological condition, has a lot of misconceptions surrounding it, so I'm just going to start off with what it is. So first, for the most part, Tourette's is not actually bursting out in swears in a quiet classroom. Uncontrollable profanity makes up about 10% of cases, but the rest of us don't have that issue at all. I'm one of those people that does not have the uncontrollable profanity, so I can't use that as an excuse for my language choices, so I just have to disappoint my family instead. Tourette's is actually just vocal and motor tics together, which can present in a whole bunch of different ways. You do have to have both types of tics to qualify for diagnosis though, so you've got to look pretty whack to be in the cool kids club. So a tic is kind of like sneezing with your nervous system. It's more specific, but it does just kind of happen. So the question I probably get the most is, can people with Tourette's control their tics? And the answer is yes and no. Technically, we can control and suppress our tics, but if you value having a neck, you probably shouldn't ask someone with Tourette's to stop ticking. I can stop ticking, but it's kind of like suppressing a cough. You can feel it there, it wants to escape, it's just waiting for you to let your guard down enough for it to attack. It takes some pretty intense focus, basically, and it's not reasonable to expect anyone to hold in something like that for any length of time. Just let our tics express themselves. Have some respect. So yes, if I do need to hold in my tics, I can. It's just really difficult and uncomfortable. Unless your mom just died, I'm gonna keep ticking. As for what my tics are, the one I do the most often is actually a vocal tic, but it is not a verbal tic. And it is, best way to describe it is just do it. Now, if you can't tell what I'm doing, because honestly, I'd be impressed if you could. That'd be cool. Basically, it's kind of like rolling an R, like in Spanish, but it's just a single roll, except instead of exhaling and vocalizing it, you are just inhaling. So, it's led me to hyperventilate many times. I do it a lot. It is a pretty weird one. I do this one so often, actually, that I actually couldn't completely edit it out of one of my videos. So I mentioned in the description, surprise, I have Tourette's, and almost all the traffic that video got, which wasn't much, to be fair, came from people searching up Tourette's. So I figured that there aren't that many creators that actually talk about having it. My other vocal tic that I do quite often is just a small hum with a throaty vibrato to it, and I almost always do the click with it, because I can't just do the hum, it always has the. My only other vocal tic almost never happens, and it's just huh, huh, huh. You just have to make an H sound. I think that's a pretty common one for people with Tourette's, actually. As for motor tics, the one I do the most often involves looking up and scrunching my eyebrows down like this, so my brow bone actually touches my eyelashes when I do that, and this just means that I've given many strangers very weird looks. The other main motor tic I do is actually just wiggling my ears, which also moves my glasses and my eyebrows every time, which makes me look interesting. Other than that, for the less frequent ones, I have and this with my shoulders, but those aren't that common. Also, very rarely I have this, but I'm going to get into that in a moment because that's one of the tics I've mostly outgrown, so I used to do that all the time. As for diagnosis, Tourette's is usually diagnosed in children, probably ages 5 to 10, but I was diagnosed really late, actually. I wasn't diagnosed until I was 17, and the doctor that did diagnose me was surprised that no one had caught it before. But in doctor's appointments as a kid, I was always quite anxious, so I would kind of suppress it the best I could because I didn't want to call any attention to myself. So that's probably why it wasn't found then. I have had tics my entire life, though, even since before I can even remember. So I'm gonna throw in some past tics, some of which were actually quite cringy, if I'm honest. They kind of corresponded to my phases. So one I mentioned earlier a bit is this. I used to do this constantly. So the best way I can describe it is just kind of having these two fingers together and having your pointer finger come down to join it, except all at once. I found that you can either do it or you can't, and it's really hard to teach. I also used to hit my wrists together like this, really hard, so I had some really resilient wrists by the end of that, because this hurts, honestly. I don't know how I put up with that all the time. I'd also do it on my hips, or my little hip dips. The cringy ones are the vocal ones. So I thought it was just part of my lol random phase that I would randomly say popcorn a lot, but it was a tic. So I was one of those lol random kids, but I do get to use my disorder as an excuse, so I guess that works out for me. The other one was even more cringy, which was meowing. I was the cat equivalent of a horse girl growing up. I just started meowing because I wanted to, and then before I knew it, it was just part of my brain, and it was just a tic at that point. It just happened. Sometimes I chose to do it because I was the worst, but sometimes it just kind of happened on its own. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. I hope you feel sufficiently educated. If you don't, make sure to comment down below and I'll answer anything that anyone asks. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!